Hello, welcome back to the channel, and as you can see with the tower spire behind me and what's next to me, this is another Explore and Revisited video. We did the first one at Moorgright Castle. Now we're here in Llandaff, and today's video will be Llandaff Cemetery, the abandoned cemetery which we went back in 2022, which you'll see clips of in this video. But we're going to look at more Llandaff Cathedral as well as the Insoles and see what is here to offer in Llandaff. So let's revisit what we've already seen, but better.
You promised me who let the boys build their own trade. Dinner is served, can't you see we're not opposites? Are you still up thinking of me? I take all the blame. Is it hard to understand when it's all the same?
So, there's always been a Christian presence here in Llandaff. The first two bishops here were St Dyfrig and Telio, but the building that I stand in front of now only dates to 1120, around the Norman period, when Bishop Urban, a Welshman, came to Wales with the remains of Bishop Dyfrig, which he got off Bardsey Island in North Wales. So this is the early Christian presence in Llandaff, but the history goes on more. Before you go down towards Llandaff, you are greeted with this, which is the old bell tower, but interestingly, it's an old Red Lion Inn. Only ruins remain, as you can see. Not much of it, you can see the Pritchard spire behind, but yeah, look at it. It's not much, just only this wall really remains. Never noticed a statue until today. The man to all the country dear, James Rice Buckley, 1878, Vicar of Llandaff, 1924, Archdeacon of Llandaff, 1913 to 1924. Some statue. Don't look like he should be a deacon, does he, with that hat? But we're going to move down towards the church and cemetery. Recently I've just released another video called the Cardiff Blitz, which talks about the 2nd of January 1941 German bombings of Cardiff, which lasted 10 hours and hit multiple parts of the city, including Llandaff. Llandaff was one of the worst affected, with Western Avenue being bombed, but this cathedral was bombed extensively by the Luftwaffe. And where I'm walking on now, this patch of grass, was the impact point of the explosion. Behind me is the Cardiff Llandaff War Memorial. In this spot, a German landmine eventually landed after it was tangled in the Pritchard Tower just up there, and it landed here and blew up and destroyed many graves. As you can see, where it's edged off around here is basically where the crater was. So this is what stands as a memorial to the bombs landed here. It did destroy the nave and made the roof collapse into the cathedral. A parachute mine getting entangled and landing here was devastating for the surrounding area. For this area, no lives were lost, so that was a positive, but overall Cardiff did see many lives lost in 1941. Now we're in the churchyard of Llandaff Cathedral, and in those trees over there, if you remember, is where the cemetery is, and I can see the footbridge in the distance. So we're going to head there. I know a little bit more about who is buried there, with a very famous family, the Insoles of Cardiff, famous Cole dynasty they've held, is actually buried here. But this bridge has actually kind of got some significant history as well, which is quite interesting. So we're going to head over there. So you can see As you can see, we're going to be heading over to there soon. But this is James Harvey Insole, one of Cardiff's rich families, probably close enough to being as rich as the Butte family. But this man built a coal dynasty, bringing goods over on little boats from the Glamorganshire Canal, which led from Merthyr down to Cardiff. So this is someone we're going to be looking at very, very soon before we head back at Insole Court. So we're going to have a look at that later on. Now we're about to enter the abandoned graveyard, but this bridge does seem quite insignificant, which we were walking over. But this is Pritchard's bridge, the man who ultimately rebuilt this cathedral. This was actually commissioned by the Lord of Bute, John Christian Stewart II, and he leased this land and basically ultimately in the end sold it to Llandaff Cemetery, the Cardiff Board of Cemeteries of Llandaff. It had a weird title, but they built this bridge, and this bridge did kind of show off the time's industrial past, because this cemetery does contain a lot of paper mill workers from Ely, Canton and Riverside, as well as many of the Insoles, as we will look at later on, and one of the Lord Mayors of Cardiff. Almost, this bridge is seen as a gateway to Cardiff's industrial past. So you'll see a lot of that here. But now we're going to head almost into what looks like an eerie darkness in the daylight to the first yew tree, and then see some of the names of Cardiff past can offer us in an insight of their life and what they used to do in the industrial age. Let's go. There you are, you're greeted with a lovely yew tree. But here we go. This is like almost the first point, because we got a couple of points down there, as you can see, and down there, and then it's almost like a new graveyard. But because compared to last time, they're actually clearing the area. There's a lot of volunteers working to make sure that this area is getting restored and graves are getting cleaned. Compared to last time, we do have a chance of reading a lot of names. I don't know if it's accessible, because he is quite inaccessible where the former Lord Mayor of Cardiff is buried, but these graves are more seen. Let's go and have a look around. You can see this is John Morris, 1875. He was 50 years old. And we have Anne Morris, who died in 1899 at 64 years old. This is one of the older graves. There's a lot older ones here, I can tell you that. But this one, which is fallen, it's quite sad to see. William Price, 1844. So he died at 50 years old, and I can't really see the name. It's something Price. That's 1875. These have been cleaned more recently, so you can see a lot of them. This is George Sage, who died at Llandaff in 1877. And this is Emily O'Leary, who died in 1928. So we've got a mixture of all eras here at the moment. You can see a tree's growing out of that grave by there. We'll get into why this area was ultimately abandoned very, very soon, because it's more down to bureaucracy than actual dark reasonings or anything that people might say this is weird, but it is just down to paperwork ultimately. There's only a grave by here I want to show you, which almost leads to an old rugby pitch. I guess it's like Llandaff Rugby Club there. But There we go. This is William Phillips, 1835. I can't make it out, but a Celtic cross. I'll be thy one, I think that says. Going around the cross, but we have got more behind us. I haven't noticed that one though on the scroll. We'll go down here as well. This is like a lot of it's hidden. That's just, you can't see much of that one because it's starting to get overgrown. Nature's reclaimed there. You can see there's some under the trees, but there as well. But this one is Richard Morgan Harris, who died in 1893 at the age of 48 years old, and Harriet Harris in 1939 at 87 years old. She survived substantially longer than Richard. So let's head over to, by here we have another collection of graves. So a lot older graves. This is Sarah, the beloved wife of Thomas Williams, died in the 23rd of January 1888. And then I don't really want to walk over some of these graves, but I have to just find a way of going around them. This is very, very hard to see. This is in loving memory of Kate Emily, infant daughter of Thomas and Sarah Williams, which is the grave next to us. Born October 1861 at Castlefield House, Maindy, on March the 21st, 1862. It's quite sad actually, an infant. And I'm just going to move on. And this is another one of the Griffiths family, which is in memory of daughter Sarah, Thomas and Anne Griffith, Evelyn of Evelyn, this parish, who died in April 1862. So this seems like a big family that's buried in this one area. And then we've got Joseph Broben, if I'm correct saying that, who died in 1888 on September 16th, age 64. There's another grave in there, a cross. We have a lot of work clearing this. And we have these ones right by here, which is quite, we can get to them, but don't know how safe the ground is. Don't know why, this one that I'm walking up to does stand out a little bit to me. So both of them, they're very... This one, Elizabeth, who died in 1909, that's all I can make out. But this one by here, I quite like the design of this cross. Let's see if we can actually see who it is. It is very hard to read. It's the beloved wife of 1870. I can make up the date of death. But that is quite something. You can see another one is called Wilmot, Joseph Wilmot, I think that says. Put a little bit of a zoom on it. But yeah, he's 1870 as well. I can read it's February or April the 12th, 1870. He passed away. I see the restoration work is clearing up. They've cleaned some of the graves, it looks like, as well. Or attempting to. It's a lot of years of cleaning. This is James Ward of Llandaff Place, and he died in 1818. That's a very, very old grave, this one is. You can see it's some more by here. You can see the clearing is helping. You can see graves I didn't even see last time appearing here. They are doing good work, cutting back, making sure graves are accessible. This is Fanny Latch, died in January 1872. Good thing Bradley Water here. This cemetery remained open for around about 70 odd years, with it closing in 1922 due to, I think, maintaining and ultimately filling the grounds, because they do feel like there's a lot of unmarked graves here that are here and they're running out of space. But it did temporarily reopen in the 1940s for soldiers who died during the Second World War, which they offered burial. But it would eventually go abandoned after that. And the reason for the main abandonment is paperwork. Yes, paperwork. Because some point in the 50s and 60s, all of the paperwork for the cemetery, all the records, went missing. Someone lost the paperwork. So this is the reason why this place has been left in a state. Because there was no paperwork, no records, so they left it in a mess. And only now that a volunteer organisation, the Friends of Llandaff Cathedral, have taken it in their own hands to tidy it. And they have done a good job so far. But it proves one thing: as simple as losing paperwork can cause this much chaos to what should be a place of remembrance. Some modern graves by here. Was this one of the last ones from the Second World War? We'll have a look now. It does say by here, Eliza, the daughter of John. She died in 1911, so it's fairly recent. 11 years before the abandonment. But we'll move on. There's another collection of graves. There's an open crypt. Is this one of the mill workers? There's interments here. This is, I think that's it, Pernell Rees, who died at Canton, Cardiff in 1878, aged 75. We do have graves like this by here though. Big ones, family graves. Of Edgar Charles and John James Elizabeth West of Cardiff, died the 22nd of July 1875. And then we have John Thomas and a couple more here, which you can see the clearing has helped see these graves. But these ones are really hard to read. I can see someone died at the age of 25. I think it's Richard Llewellyn Rees, his name is. But we have Clara Julia Jane, the wife of Charles Ludd Esquire, on Llandaff House. Died in May 1866 at 36 years old. Then you've got Edward Quincy Lord, died September 1900 at age 44. And Julia Lard died May the 1st, 1925, age 26. And Lucy Amelia, who died in 1946, around the war era, so she would have been one of the last interments here, aged 82. Yeah, we're gonna move ahead to the yew tree and to the next point of the cemetery, which I think we have the foreman of a mill here, if I'm correct. We're going to look for that now. We've got a veteran of the Crimean War. You can see he's got his poppies. But we're going to head down there next now towards some graves around the corner. See this grave by here, like zoomed into. There's a grave that I think is the foreman of the old mill. But there's another grave next to me we can look at. This is John Thomas Diamond. Died June the 21st, 1904 at age 61. And his wife is buried here, died in 1886. It was a bit overgrown, I had to pull it all off, but we're gonna head back to this middle section where the trees are. It looks like a junction. See the new cemeteries down here, but I'm gonna head back this way past the yew tree towards the cathedral again, just because there's a couple more graves I want to show you, and then we're gonna head into the cathedral and end off at Insole Court. But here we go, there's another cross by here. Quite a nicely designed Celtic style, almost Norman style at the same time. But we're going to head towards the last bit of the cemetery, down more towards the River Taff, then head into the cathedral. But this is one of them by here. So there's another war grave. This is of George Frederick Insole, another of the Insole family. Born in November 1847, died in 1917. He's one of the last real Insoles. He was the last big one of the Cole dynasties before it starts declining. And this is George Latham Insole, who was part of the Welsh Guards, killed in action April 12th, 1918, aged 30. This is obviously where the poppies come into. And this is of Violet Lily Insole, the youngest daughter, and she was born in 1884 and died in 1832. Also Jessie Ann, who is the wife to George Insole, I'm presuming, because they don't really say. She was born in 1853 and died in 1938. But yeah, this is one of the graves that I was saying that is here of the Insole family. This is the last bit of the abandoned cemetery here in Llandaff. We've just seen Frederick George Insole's grave, but there's another notable figure of Cardiff which you won't be able to see the grave of because it can be quite inaccessible. I don't really know where it is. My guess would be behind all this brush and overgrowth. But that is of Mayor, or the former Mayor of Cardiff, George Melhurch, who is buried somewhere here. Hopefully when the restorations happen, they will uncover his grave somewhere if it's not badly damaged. But the last couple of graves here will lead us all the way back to the doors of Llandaff Cathedral, which we're going to have a look at more of the history of that cathedral now, before we head to learn more about the Insoles, because they are a very interesting family here in Llandaff and Cardiff. Let's go. But this seems like where most of the graves you'll find are here. This is of... it's something Gibson, I can't understand that due to the overgrowth. But then you see that it is more down here, which we'll get to. But it's another yew tree you are greeted with here, so we're just going to head more towards these graves by here. It's the grave of Thomas Vaughan Yorath. I wonder if he's related to the former Cardiff City manager Terry Yorath, who was also the father of the BBC presenter Gabby Logan. He was from Grangetown. See, Canton's nearby. I wonder if that's one of the people who is buried here. I wonder. Well, I'll look it up, and if it is true, it will be on screen now. We've got Albert Henry Wiltshire, 1879, a well looked after grave considering for this graveyard. He was aged 29. And there's John Henry Parfitt, the husband of Catherine Parfitt, who died at 72 years old in 1930. So he must have been added to the burials in the years where they basically shut the cemetery. This is George, the husband of Esther Coombs, who died in 1915, Francis John, and Esther Coombs, who died in 1920, 25 years. You can see some nice old graves here. You can see the restoration work is going on. See a nice tree growing out of this one. But this is what is remains of here. That's Llandaff Cemetery. It's quite incredible. Well, I was about to head off towards Llandaff Cathedral, but I come across this grave. This is quite an interesting one. This is of William Charles Giles, if I can correctly read the name. And he died because he drowned at Ely Paper Mill on April the 26th, 1899. And I did not know anything about this paper mill drowning. So I'm just probably going to just add a couple of facts on text on the screen, because that could be a future video. A future short video talking about the Ely Paper Mill. Yeah, that's something I never knew. Like, unlocking Cardiff's history is quite incredible. And this is one of the reasons why this graveyard should be restored. Look at it, it's just overgrown, because it carries so much history. You've got a Lord Mayor buried here, you have one of the biggest coal merchants buried here, and you have foremen from the industrial past and people who survived disasters or died at disasters buried here. Llandaff holds a lot of history. So now we're going to have a look at that history in the cathedral. Llandaff Cathedral now, so I've got to whisper because you've got to be respectful in churches. And I'm in the Welsh Guards room, sitting on one of the pews. But this cathedral did have the Archbishop of Canterbury, Baldwin, come here to tour Wales ultimately. And basically what he did, he came here with Gerald of Wales and he preached. And this was the reason why we had many Welsh recruits into the Third Crusades. But we're going to look at the rest of this room and the rest of this cathedral, as well as going through more history. This is got some remembrance of battles where the Welsh Guard has fought in. So let's continue and have a look. It is some of the flags of the Welsh Guard. I don't think I'm allowed to touch it, but I'm gonna not do that. But getting held up by St. Julian's, Friarsburg, for the Battle of Waterloo, Detroit, Queenstown. You've got the Cambria Terrace, which is the Latin name of the Welsh Guard. But this is the main altar point, which is support for Ukraine this year. Something to see. You can see some old battered flags up there from battles of past. There's a lot of history here, the battered Union Jacks. But I can't see a Welsh dragon in here. We'll keep a look around, because you can see some of this by here, which is quite incredible. Let's head back into the main bit. You are greeted with this when you walk in though, which is incredible. This part of the nave is actually rebuilt due to the bombings in 1941. But this is what a proper cathedral looks like. It is something to see, especially that. I'm not Christian, but that is incredible. You've got to give it to them, they are great architecture. Here we are, we move further down into this incredible part, which you can see the organ pipes. And I always like this part of the seats of all the time I come in here, where they have like designs of a castle, maybe in other churches. But I'm guessing, if I'm correct, this is where the choir goes. Has its Latin names. But it is incredible. Let's go up and have a look at this as well. Oh, it's beautiful. I will give it to them. They are beautiful, these cathedrals. I will move further down to what looks like the altar. Giant candles. Big area, grand red seats. So they're for kneeling down prayers. Gotta say, this is something. We've got another altar room down there which has got some great ceiling patterns. Even by it, the ceiling looks great. But let's head down this part now and then see what is this memorial by here. In memorial of the Right Honourable John Nichols, DCL, the chairman of the quarter session in the county of Glamorgan from 1832 to 1851. But you can see, like, this is what's wonderful about, like, cathedrals. You can just come down here into a little corner and almost find another small church. We'll find out what this is now. This is a very, very small, lovely stained glass, very old stone altar. But it's wonderful. There's a lot of memorials here. The second Earl of Llandaff, born in London, died in Cape Town. You see the old stone that remains here. Probably from the very, very early Norman years, it looks very much. Same with this. It looks very, very of the Norman period. This might be one of the oldest parts of the cathedral. So I think we just come from a Norman room. This is probably the Tudor inspired room due to the roses that's on the ceiling. It's a red rose, so we know that's the Lancashire rose. But we're going to look down here. You can see this is another old part. You can see the Tudor inspired styles. The giant stained glass is only a thing of the Tudor period. But these almost flags by here, you can see. There's a big thing that's inspired by Tudor architecture. The Llandaff Parish, 1898 to 1998. And we're just going to have an admiring of this altar now. Well, this is the ladies' chapel I've just discovered. So it is stunning, like a lot of this place is. And we'll just have a look at that now. But here we are, look at this, little tombs of Sir David Matthew, the standard bearer of King Edward. We've got the Bishop of Llandaff, 1843 to 1849. We have another older one of a bishop, John Marshall, 1478 to 1496. Let me go over by here, which is more older tombs. St. Dovrig, which is the one who basically established this area, the diocese. There is so much history in here, it's unbelievable. I'm going to head to another bit before we start looking towards Insole Court. But here we are. This is the Second World War memorial within the cathedral, part of the parish. But this is George Gay's Pace, appointed as a cathedral architect in 1940 in 1949 to 1975. Restoration after the ravaged by the war. So George Gay's Pace rebuilt this entire area after the German bomb dropped on it, and this looks like it's the remains of that, the memory of it, all in this one little area with a small altar, almost like a prayer room. This is one of the best cathedrals you can visit. It's a small cathedral by some in Britain's standards, but this is one that is incredible to see. This could be a future video. The Penrhys pilgrimage could be done in 2 parts. Llandaff to Cathedral, and Cathedral to Llantrystan and Tonna, Fail to Penrhys. It's a good little hiking video. I haven't done one of them in a while, but it'd be cool. See what a actual Christian pilgrimage is like. But we're gonna head on now towards the last bit, and then Insole Court to end the video off. Quite incredible. This is on the way to the toilet. There's sculptures and just gargoyles in here on some old wall. But hidden things in Llandaff Cathedral. Llandaff is also the home of Roald Dahl, the famous children's author who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He wrote The Twits, Witches, and James and the Giant Peach, BFG. The list goes on when it comes to Roald Dahl. But this by here is the old Mrs Pratchett sweet shop. In his autobiography, The Boy, he recounts while he was at Llandaff Cathedral High School that he used to frequent this tuck shop quite a lot, and as you can see on the artwork, it depicts what he did. Basically, Mrs Pratchett, in his eyes, was seen as an unreasonable, horrible old woman who didn't like children, basically. That's what he saw in his youth's eyes. And they decided, Roald Dahl and his mates, to put a prank on her. As he would, it kind of mirror images his later books. Dahl decided to find a dead rat and put it into a jar of gobstoppers while Mrs Pratchett wasn't looking or wasn't in the room. So when they did ask Mrs Pratchett to get the gobstopper at the bottom of the jar, she pulled out the rat, freaked out, the boy started laughing, and then she just ran away, basically. This did reach the Llandaff Cathedral School, and for this, Dahl was caned. So Roald Dahl would take a lot of inspiration from Mrs Pratchett. The Twits came from Mrs Pratchett, and also Miss Trunchbull was loosely based off Mrs Pratchett's Matilda. So Roald Dahl would become an icon in children's literature and also one of the icons of Cardiff. And this place is one little place that remains of him that a lot of people don't know about. To Insole Court, or formerly, when it was owned by the Insole family, it was called Ely Court. The Insole family's wealth began with George Insole, who basically used the Glamorganshire Canal to start his business, which carried coal and goods from areas like Merthyr Tydfil, Aberfan, Pontypridd, Llangarw, down to Cardiff. There was coal, tin, iron and pottery was carried all the way down from the docks of Cardiff. His wealth would grow, and he would have a son called James Harvey Insole, which we saw the grave before crossing over to the abandoned cemetery, and he would build the empire bigger because he started using the trains as well as the canal to bring goods down, as well as opening the Cummer Colliery, which we'll have a look at a bit later on down the line because there is something over there about Cwm Colliery, and the family's wealth exploded. But when George Frederick Insole in the 1900s, the early 1900s, became the new inheritor of the family, Insole Court, where we are standing now, was flourishing. But he did have to sell land in the 1920s to the Cardiff Corporation to build what is now Western Avenue. But as coal declined after the Second World War, the Insole family struggled, and the last remaining member of the Insole family, according to Wales Online, is just some normal woman now, without the wealth, living in South Africa, in Cape Town. Let's have a look at Insole Court now to round off the video. Some of the people who helped build Llandaff, who is buried at that cemetery that we visited on both sides. And just look at it, it's incredible. I'm here in front of me is the Cwm Memorial. The Cwm disaster happened when the pit was owned by the Insoles. The youngest person to die was at 10 years old. We did have a 12-year-old as well. 144 people passed away in this pit disaster. And the bundle of coal in front of us is what is remembered here at Insole Court. Surely that there is memories also in hopes for this disaster. Well, this is Insole Court's drawing room. The old bay windows, a little conservatory area there, very much into their flowers. I see a sign for the south lawn, but this is something else now. To see in Cardiff, the old dimmer light switches. And this bay window was the view, which would have been a lot more clearer, a lot more land if it wasn't for Western Avenue down there. Looking at the south lawn. Quite an incredible room. There's two fireplaces there you can look at. So yeah, this is one of the first rooms here at Insole Court. Oh, nice walkway there, going towards the south garden with the flowers. You can see why this was a lovely area for him to live. Cardiff powerful and rich. Another.
Stop me, dead in my tracks. I was headed for disaster, and then I turned back. I was wrestling with the coat hanger. Can you guess who won? The universe shrugged, shook, then moved on. It's a guess, no idea. It's a feeling.
That is Llandaff Cemetery, Llandaff Cathedral, and Insole Court. And like the part of this explore we visited is obviously expanding what we did last time, but also seeing new places if we can. But that is this one done. We've still got more, so a lot of places in Cardiff to see, part of this. So let's get ready for the next one, which will hopefully either be Lab Knock Factory or Stand by the Corner. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.